3 police officers have been confirmed dead after a shooting in the US city of Baton Rouge, that's in Louisiana. The incident happened early on Sunday, not far from a local police headquarters. It was when a group of gunmen opened fire on officers. The number of those injured is still unclear, with reports suggesting a total of 7 officers were hit. One of the shooters has been killed, and 2 others are believed to be at large, according to the city's sheriff's office. Baton Rouge is the city where less than 2 weeks ago a policeman shot 37-year-old Alton Sterling dead in an incident that prompted mass protests.
The terrifying moments when gunfire erupted playing out on chilling police dispatch recording.
Shot fired, officer down, shot fired, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fired. Shot fired. I know where the subject shooting from.
And now police have identified that killer as 29-year-old Gavin Long. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Harrods has been working her sources. She goes on the record from Washington, D.C. Catherine?
Well, thanks, Brenda. Earlier today, I spoke with a U.S. government official who was getting information in real time as events unfolded. And he told me that the initial piece of intelligence that the cops were working with is that they had a guy with an AK-style weapon with a bulletproof vest, and he was either on foot or in a vehicle. And based on what we heard on the news conference this afternoon, that lays out a couple of different scenarios, that he shot some of the cops, and then as they arrived on scene, he continued the shooting, or he was in a vehicle at one point and he was able to spray the cops, which I think helps explain the high number of casualties and injuries, Greta.
Is there, we always hear whether someone is known to the police or not, known to law enforcement or not. Was this killer known to law enforcement?
Well, what we know tonight is that police are descending on his home in Kansas City, Missouri, and they are doing so with their weapons drawn. And earlier today, our affiliate there in Kansas City went to that last known address for Gavin Long and said that when they approached the house, that the guy who answered brandished a weapon in an effort to get them to leave the property. There are reports this evening that he was a member of anti-government groups. We have not independently confirmed that, and certainly we have heard nothing from our contacts or at that news conference earlier this afternoon that he was known to police and considered a threat, Greta.
Authorities say the attack appeared to be well planned. The shooter has been identified as 29-year-old Gavin Long, a military vet. The FBI now warning law enforcement across this country of potential threats, just a week after the deadly ambush in Dallas that killed 5 officers. President Obama condemning the shooting late today, saying attacks on public servants are the works of cowards.
Now, French Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve says the country is set to call up the reserves to relieve tired security forces after a deadly attack in the city of Nice.
The decision has been taken to call up the operational reserves for the National Police and Gendarmerie. This mobilization of the operational reserves, which can only take place in summer during the reserves' holidays, will allow the prefecture from now and in each area to use a rapidly mobile resource of 12,000 volunteers, 9,000 for the National Gendarmerie and 3,000 for the police.
Now, he called on all volunteer citizens to join the reservists to help boost security, as some 26,000 out of over 200,000 reserve forces in France are expected to be called up.
It took more than 36 hours, but Islamic State finally declared it was the inspiration behind the massacre. Meanwhile, French citizens as well as politicians have been asking how the country's security forces could have allowed such a terrible act to happen, particularly as a state of emergency has been in place since November's terror attacks in Paris.
Well, this is where the truck ran down the promenade, killing scores. Absolute horror. And some now asking, how can a massive truck ever have had access to the promenade? And how can France even prevent these sorts of attacks? It doesn't look like the government has an idea of how to prevent this.
Times have changed, and we should learn to live with terrorism.
The idea that the French way of life may now have to accept living in fear of the next terrorist atrocity has caused fury across the political spectrum.
There's not even any evidence of political will to bring it under control. How can you tell people that we've got to learn to live with terrorism? Why should we learn to live with terrorism? That's an absurd thing to say.
We've been training and providing or starting to work on the security issues about a year ago. So we've been preparing for over a year for this week.
Right now, there are dozens of Secret Service agents in Cleveland, and they set up this barricade, although the city itself has a large role to play too.
Every one of our officers are on duty this next week. They're working 12 to 14-hour shifts in a rotation, and we have about 1,500 to 1,800 police officers, so the city of Cleveland is all in.
Alongside Cleveland's officers, there'll be about 5,000 police working the event, coming from all over the country.
I know that Austin just provided us with additional police horses. Every municipality that's coming in is not only providing bodies, but additional cars and etc.
But getting all of that law enforcement posed some challenges. Some departments pulled out at the end of May because Cleveland's insurance wasn't going to pay for police injuries. But that's changed.
The city paid $9.2 million for an additional insurance policy that will cover law enforcement as well as if anything else happens to a business, to a building, to an individual.
The city of Cleveland is hoping to get some of that money back through all the convention goers boosting the local economy.
More than 2,000 people, including military officers, policemen, volunteers, and Olympic officials, took part in the exercises. Brazilian police escorted more than 250 buses along pre-planned routes between the city and the stadium to ensure everything runs smoothly on the game's opening day. Officials say they are taking security seriously following the truck massacre in Nice that killed 84 people. More than 10,000 athletes from more than 200 nations are expected to compete in the games, which will run from August 5th through August 21st.
We want to bring in ABC contributor Steve Ganyard. Steve's a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. Steve, I know you have extensive experience in that region. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Paula.
And first and foremost, the U.S. military base there in Turkey, is it still on lockdown and without power? And we know this base has been crucial in the fight against ISIS, so how concerning is this?
Incirlik is useful because it's much closer to Syria, so U.S. warplanes going in to attack ISIS targets have a much shorter transit time. So with it being shut down, they're going to have to fly sorties all the way up from the Persian Gulf, so the transit times be longer. It means fewer sorties. But I think it's going to be interesting to watch how Erdogan uses Incirlik as a tool in the relationship with the U.S. going forward. When does the power come back on? When will the U.S. be allowed to continue these sorties?
A monitor group has said at least 19 civilians have been killed in airstrikes in the Syrian city of Aleppo. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said warplanes dropped barrel bombs on several neighborhoods of the city on Saturday. Videos posted on the internet appear to show the devastating aftermath of the bombardment in the Al Firdouz and Al Shaheen neighborhood. The strikes come just one day after U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov said they had agreed on, quote, concrete steps to salvage the failing ceasefire.
Police say a Pakistani social media celebrity and model was killed by her brother in what they deem an honor killing. Kandil Balakh first rose to fame in 2014 and is often called Pakistan's Kim Kardashian. She identified as a modern-day feminist and was known for posting sometimes racy photos and videos that caused anger in the predominantly Muslim country. Police say Balakh was strangled to death by her brother over honor. Family members told the Express Tribune that her brother was threatening her over photos she posted to social media and that he wanted her to quit modeling. Her parents have also been detained by police. Balakh had reportedly moved to Punjab, Pakistan from Karachi because she feared for her safety after receiving death threats. Pakistan's Human Rights Commission says last year more than 1,000 women in the country were victims of an honor crime.
Has been made in London. Today, the British House of Commons passed a bill allowing scientists to make babies from 3 parents. This puts Britain on course to become the first country in the world to approve such a controversial method.
The babies would have the genes from a mother, a father, and a female donor. The technique is aimed at stopping infants from being born with inherited diseases. But critics say it is one step closer to producing designer babies.
Mitochondria are the power packs of our cells, but when faulty can cause a huge range of diseases in the muscles, heart and other organs. Within hours of IVF, the parent's key DNA that shapes our appearance and personality would be removed, leaving behind the faulty mitochondria. All the key genes would be placed into a donor embryo that's had its DNA removed and contains only healthy mitochondria. Any child born and future generations would have DNA from 3 people, although only 0.1% from the donor in the mitochondria.
Bad news for banana lovers. The fruit is under attack by a disease that's threatening the entire industry. It's called Panama disease or Fusarium wilt. It stays in the soil for up to 40 years. It's already spread from Asia to parts of Africa, Australia, and the Middle East. There are fears it could strike Latin America, where North America and Europe get most of their bananas from. It targets Cavendish bananas, the most popular variety in the United States. If it spreads to Latin America, we could see prices go up and different varieties in stores. For now, billions of dollars and bananas are at stake.
Even the water that I got in the sink there now, I water my plants with it. I don't throw it down the drain.
Being water-wise, she is, and that's the name of the game as Western New Yorkers deal with this drought. In the village of Alden, a mandatory water restriction is now in effect. That means no lawn watering, filling of pools, or car washing. Also, you can only water plants 2 times per week and limit your dishes and laundry to only full loads. So, how are people weathering these water woes?
Okay, that's all they're going to get today.
90-year-old Dorothy Tomzik is working hard to ration her water and keep her flowers blooming while the town of Holland deals with severe drought conditions.
Oh, it's terrible, terrible. I don't like it. I want rain.
25 miles away in the village of Alden, residents are doing the same as voluntary water restriction became mandatory this afternoon.
It's painful to me. My husband and I take a lot of pride in our yard. We do use a lot of water to keep it watered. It's been so long since it's rained.
As creeks go dry and grass turns yellow, residents in both areas are being asked to cut back on watering plants.
I'm going to lose about $1,000 for my flowers, which is ridiculous.
Washing cars.
Having a nice clean car with no spots, it's important to my husband, so that not being able to wash your car, it's painful.
Filling pools and watering lawns. Residents are also working hard to keep their gardens growing while controlling their water consumption.
I get my water the night before so it'd be warm, and then I water them the next day.
People who live in the areas are asking for one thing.
It's scary that it's not raining. We just pray for rain.
I pray every night that the God gives us rain. Yes, I do.
Behind me are endless fields of green orchards. Clearly, here in the Central Valley, the agricultural landscape is getting plenty of water. But then, over here, you have the landscape for what the rest of California looks like for the most part, incredibly brown and dry because of the drought. They get no water.
This is the dichotomy of the Central Valley. Big booming industry versus small minority communities. California's farmlands produce almost half of America's vegetables, fruits, and nuts, consuming 80% of the state's developed water in the process.
Central Valley is filled with farmlands that drink up all of the water that local communities need to keep themselves up and running. So people who live in places like Kern County and also in Tulare County are having a lot of problems with contamination in the water.
Because of the drought, there isn't enough water to dilute or flush out contaminants like arsenic, nitrate, uranium, and pesticides. None are visible to the naked eye, and because the pumps are not regulated for contamination, these small, predominantly Latino communities are disproportionately affected by unsafe drinking water. In Tulare County, drinking water has elevated levels of nitrate from fertilizer runoff and the unregulated storage and disposal of animal waste. The International Agency for Research on Cancer labels nitrates as a carcinogen to humans. Nitrates have caused rashes in those who have showered or bathed in contaminated water, and it has also been linked to causing different types of cancers, thyroid issues, reproductive complications, and even blood disorders when consumed. Last year, the State Water Resources Board issued this warning. Do not give water to infants. Infants below the age of 6 months who drink water containing nitrate may quickly become seriously ill and, if untreated, may die because nitrate levels can interfere with the capacity of the infant's blood to carry oxygen.
I've been walking around the neighborhoods here in Tulare today where
the groundwater has been toxic enough to kill infants under 6 months old.
And this happens to infants just within a matter of days. As you can see behind me, children are playing in a swimming pool filled with this contaminated water, mainly because there are no alternative sources for groundwater here in Tulare.